Hello and welcome to the live. It's at a different time, 6 p.m., and I'm waiting for my guest to arrive. He may be running a bit behind. Tonight, I'll be chatting with, I'm just putting all my stuff away. I was making some notes on UFO phenomena. Hey, Diane, how are you? Thanks for joining. Just waiting for my guest, Jordan, to arrive. Diane, while you're here, can you please tell me the name of that Egypt channel on YouTube? I was looking for it the other day and I misplaced the paper. I hate when I do that. I need to stick with big notepads so that I don't misplace them. So, yeah, I'm hoping Jordan will be joining us soon. I know he was feeling a bit under the weather, but I emailed him this morning and he was feeling a bit better. So hopefully, and sometimes it gets confusing between the different time zones. I know myself, I'm kind of like, oh, wait. Hey, Van. Not too bad. My jaw's finally better, thank you. The tooth hasn't been a problem, so that part's good. I was just saying, I'm waiting for Jordan to arrive, so hopefully he won't be too much longer, and we'll start chatting UFOs. I finally finished the UFO phenomena again. I'm buddy reading that with Read by Fred. And the reason that I was doing notes on this isn't for the buddy read, but more because I'm trying to pull this whole basket of information together and timelines and everything. And it's really, the more I keep going through these books so that it's fresh in my mind, it's amazing how many of the same names, like the researchers, the military, all of that, they just keep coming up over and over and over again. So it's been interesting. Then, how many books have you bought recently? Man, I'm going to have like 3 or 4 trips to the thrift store to outdo you. I was trying to think, yeah, can't remember now, but yeah, so hopefully Jordan won't be too much later since it's only the 12th then. Ooh, and mainly physical this time. You're going to have like reading set up for years to come. But yeah, I need to check out my library. It's the one thing about that whole Florida dealio. I need to track down the different titles. And I'm surprised. My library actually has a whole bunch of them, including It, which I looked for to try and do the buddy read back in Don't Die July, and I couldn't find it. And now, sure enough, there it is. I'm like, seriously? But there's a lot of people up here reading Stephen King because, hey, Bad, how are you doing? We're still waiting on my guest. Hopefully he won't be too long. But yeah, the Stephen King books, because I can get them through Libby, so audio or ebook, and they do have some on the shelves. Actually, I'm going to the library on Saturday to pick up a couple. Oh, hey, here's Jordan. Okay, so I will be carrying on with the King books. Hello, Jordan. How are you
Hey,
feeling?
I don't even want to get into it. I'm feeling awful.
Oh,
No, I shouldn't say that. I'm feeling awful in my heart because I'm now feeling better, but my 2 young kids are both like home from school sick and they caught dad's dirty virus.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so it's like, being sick is one thing, but seeing your kid sick is so much worse.
Yeah, and are they younger?
Yeah. I have a 12 and 6. And
Oh,
my 6-year-old spent the night sleeping on the couch with me with a bucket next to him. So it was one of those nights.
oh, poor little muffin.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But no, I'm feeling fine. I'm back to normal. It was very nice of you to see online that I was sick and reach out. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, I figured, I have a very quiet channel and I know you've got a busy schedule. So I thought, oh, poor guy, if he's not feeling good and he's like, what? I'm showing up for 2 people? What is she, nuts?
No, my goodness, no. Happy to be here.
Oh,
I
thanks.
love, like, one of the things I love about like podcasts and YouTube and streaming is that there are people who, like, despite whether or not you have a big audience or whatever, they're just there talking about something they're sincerely interested in, and that's what
Exactly.
you do, and I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've been before you arrived, I was chatting with my guests or my viewers. We have Diane and Ven, who, Lord love him, he's in the UK, so it's
Ooh,
5 hours ahead. He's a diehard. I love that guy.
wow.
And we have Bad, and I'm pretty sure Bad's in Texas, so time-wise, she's only an hour behind. So we have 3 viewers here and loyal followers, and I love all their channels.
Oh, great.
And I'm so glad to have you here, Jordan. Thank you so much. And
My
it's
pleasure.
funny, I found you because of They're Already Here.
Okay.
Now, can't say I'm impressed with the book. I
Okay.
was
I
when
didn't
I
write it.
first. No, I know it's by Sarah Scholes, and she's a journalist. Now, here's the funny thing. When I first read it, I borrowed it from the library. I was very impressed with it. And she gets in, her focus of the book is the people who look into the UFO phenomena, not so much what are the UFOs. But
Okay.
of course, through this comes up Robert Bigelow, the Utah Ranch, all the funding, that stuff. So I thought, well, isn't this fascinating? And it's a fascinating take on it. But in here, she also talks about Chris Rakowski.
Okay. Yes.
And because then I started fact checking a few different things with her, because I've also read, this is my UFO basket beside me. I'm all set.
Everyone should have one.
Yeah. Hunt for the Skinwalker and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
Okay.
Now, that's by Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, so scientist and journalist talking about Bigelow, how the funding came about. And of course, half the challenge with figuring this out are all this alphabet soup crap instead of names, right? So who she says got the funding, and this book is in 2020. Skinwalkers is 2021, where they say, no, it wasn't that agency, it was this one, but things are hush hush secret. So we just let people go with, yeah, that's the Bigelow agency that got it. And I'm thinking, honey, you've got way better contacts than I do. So how could you have missed that? But I'm so glad I got it, because then I started looking into Chris Rakowski. I'm like, yeah, Canadian astronomer. And then I saw him on your channel talking about the survey he's done.
Yeah, I've had him on. Chris and I we connected years ago, and I've had him on every year as he releases his Canadian UFO survey or Canadian UFO report. And for your listeners or viewers who may not know what he does, is Chris is like, he doesn't get deep into like what they saw or what it could be. He more just looks at the raw data. He compiles all the reports. How many people saw it? What day did they see it? Which direction were they looking? Which color was it? How long did they see it for? And he just compiles that data and releases an annual report showcasing the year in UFO sightings in Canada, and then compares that data to prior years, looking for, trends in the data. And I think for someone who doesn't get caught up too much in the different hypotheses about what it could be,
Mm-hmm.
Chris's report is amazing, and I think it like the title of that book, They're Already Here. Some
Yep.
people will say like, do you believe in UFOs? It's like there's no question UFOs are a thing. Here's like Chris's report shows that it is a phenomenon that's actually here and happening and has been for years. I think it just sets a nice foundation for
Mm-hmm.
conversations on this topic, and without it being too crazy. He doesn't get into, and then she gave birth to the alien and that kind of stuff.
And that's the thing. And I actually just finished, I'm doing a buddy read with someone here in Ontario, actually. This is the UFO phenomena. It's from the Time Life
Oh yeah,
series.
I had that when
Now
I was a
it's
kid.
Yeah, it's great rereading it, and it's from 1987. And I love going back to the older books
Hmm.
because it gives you an idea how things have changed. But I was just today, as I was finishing up doing my notes, it was saying the big thing Hynek always was asking for up until his death in 1986 was just look at the data.
Hmm.
Don't make assumptions, follow the data, and you'll get your answers. And I'm not into its spaceships. I mean, there's a whole other spin-off to the issue and whatnot, but I think they are literally what they're called, unidentified flying objects.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that it sounds that's like what Chris is pursuing. And I know from watching your video, he had commented as well, there's a bit of a change with the information he can get now. I'm sure over the 34 years, a variety of different things or changes or trends of what's going on.
Hmm.
But before we get into that a little much, how about letting my viewers know about your channel? Because I did notice yours is quite a bit true crime, which I don't follow, sorry, but it would be like reading about or watching about my former clients. And yeah, no,
Yeah,
been
I
there, done that.
yeah, no, I get it, and I do a bit of everything. The way I tag my show is called Nighttime, simply
Yep.
because it's what I do at night. It was my Nighttime podcast was the placeholder for the name, and then it just stuck. But I tag the show as Nighttime, Canadian crime, mysteries, and the weird. And so
Hmm.
what kind of falls into that is Canadian-based stories, either set in the topics of true crime, mysteries, which could be a missing persons case, an unsolved
Hmm.
crime, or just a like an archaeological mystery or something could fall in there. Of course, the UFO phenomenon I certainly see as a mystery,
Yep.
and by the weird, I just like to find like where I kind of dabble in Canadian history stories as well. Modern Canadian history, like the last, say, 30 to 50 years. I like to find the weird, unique, offbeat story that nobody else has talked about, or maybe no
Hmm.
one even cared to dig in. And then I will try to dig in deeper than anyone would ever want to and see what's in there. And so that's kind of how I see it. But I guess the one thread that ties all my topics together is that it's all Canadian-based stories, generally with Canadian guests about Canadian people, told by someone with a Canadian accent.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, and I'll apologize to the viewers of, I'm not usually this far behind on comments. Um, but yeah, I was mentioning there's two other Canadian booktubers I know, and we seem to be a rare breed. It's
Booktuber.
most,
I've never heard that before. That's great.
See, and I hadn't until a while ago. I'm into year 2.5 now. And I've always had a focus on books. I just hadn't known about the booktube community.
Cool.
And then I kind of stumbled into this just this past January. And what an amazing group of people. And we
Mhm.
chat. Like my channel, I have books, my cats, and nature videos. So my yard and gardening, that type of thing.
All right.
But there's a whole group of people, and we chat about books, a whole lot of different genres. Bad does this amazing crochet work. And so she shows off her crochet and chats about the horror books she reads.
Ooh.
Ven has different genres he reads, and we're not going to get into twinkly things aren't vampires. Sorry, Bad and Ven, but Dracula rocks. I did see Dracula go along the
Certainly.
comments there.
Yeah.
So yeah, booktube has been kind of a fun adventure, and then getting into different things. But as I mentioned to another booktuber I emailed, I'm trying to find Canadian content as well. Nothing against the other countries,
Mhm.
but there's got to be more of us out there. Like, there's UFOs in Canada. We have amazing ghost stories to
Mhm.
tell and places to investigate. But to try and find people doing that
Mm.
is, like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, it is sometimes. I often say, like, as someone who's covered Canadian stories for years, I often say Canadian stories don't get past the border. They kind of get stuck
Mm,
within Canada. And a lot of the media we're fed, whether it's social media, online, or television, it's generally American based. So it's hard to find that Canadian stuff unless you're watching
yeah.
like local TV, which is a dying breed, of course.
And even that, it's a snippet, and then what's happening in the
Yeah.
States, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know if it has to do with changing legislation and it's just harder to find, or there just aren't as many Canadians doing YouTube, or we're just having to track each other down bit by bit, especially
Yeah.
if you're a small channel, right? Because
Yeah.
like I say, I found you because of that book, which
Ain't
was,
that something?
trying to find Chris. And then I found you, and then I'm like, awesome,
Yeah.
maybe someday I'll be able to chat with Chris and have him on. Because with my channel, what I've decided to do now is have themes, and they're usually 2 months each. So right now, August, September is the UFOs and
Mm.
conspiracies. And then October, November, there's got to be ghosts, vampires, and cryptids, all the things that go bump in the night.
Oh,
And it'll
yes.
be kind of a cool overlap because as I was reading some of the other books, they're all talking about how now UFOs, ghosts, and cryptids, they're seeing these all connect, right? They,
Mhm.
they come up, these Bigfoot, whatever you want to call them, are around, certainly at the ranch. There was all kinds of things together. So instead of three separate bodies, it's almost like if they all get together,
Mm.
they may find answers. I just want to read that. So, Elaine Jordan, look into reading on a book about this subject soon. I love it. And
It is.
just before you came on, Jordan, I was saying that going through these books again, because some I've read twice, some I've read 3 times. And so the information and the dates and names are all starting to jibe. And it's like, how many times have I read Jacques Vallée's name now?
Mhm.
Where does Bigelow keep coming into all of
Yeah.
this?
It's funny,
And
the
like,
same names pop up and have been for years, and if you follow the UFO story, going back to the 60s and 70s, it's the
mm-hmm,
same people, the same themes keep getting raised. And it's like we get right to the goalpost of finding out
yep,
what's about to happen. And then it's like there's this new mystery that's revealed. And like the way you are with books, you're going through all the stories and through books.
yep,
I'm really into radio is my thing, radio and
mm,
podcasts. But what I listen to a lot, I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Art Bell. He's an American
yes,
radio
coast
show
to
host.
coast.
Yeah.
Fun
Yeah.
fact, once you tell me about that, fun fact about coast
Well,
to
coast to coast.
coast that I just learned.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I listen to, I have like an archive of all the old episodes of Coast to Coast. And for people unfamiliar, what that is Coast to Coast was a radio show this guy hosted out of his basement in the desert in Arizona, I think he
Yep.
was. But anyway, and the show was like talk radio, and it would broadcast all night, all across the world, really. And he would talk about conspiracy theories, ghosts, UFOs, all that sort of thing. And
Yep.
he had like an open mind, almost to the point of fault. Like people could call in and be like, listen, Art, I am an alien who's traveled through time, and I'm now here to tell you the truth about whatever. And he'll be like, all right, let's go. Like, I'm glad you called. And but anyway, when I'm back listening to those old episodes from the 80s and stuff, it's, if it wasn't for the quality of the microphone, you wouldn't know that it's a current modern, you wouldn't know that it is not a modern day podcast about the UFO topic, because it's all the same people, the same elements, the same topics. It's fascinating.
It is. Now,
But I want to
here's
hear
what
your
I
quote. Yeah, I want to hear it.
well, here's what I learned reading Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who started Coast to Coast?
Robert Bigelow?
Boom!
Really?
And George Knapp.
I'm not surprised. They
Somehow they had a connection with Art Bell.
Mhm.
And I'd have to go back in the book to figure it out. But I'm like, because that's how I know George Newry. I've never listened to the program. I've always wanted to. But I do know George Newry, and he's still doing the same thing. And I have a couple of his books, and one of them is based on, he's got conversations of people, and that's how he builds the chapters, right?
Yeah.
So he's continued on what Art had started. And it wasn't until I read this at the Pentagon book that I'm like, how is Bigelow is into everything.
Well, people always say, like, if I had $1 billion, I would be into this craziness. Some people would end up at like Michael Jackson or something, like this like weirdo hermit who's probably doing horrible things. Some people would end up as I don't know, Elon Musk. And then others, I guess, I would probably end up like a Robert Bigelow. I would just find like the people who are into getting into the really weird stuff, and I'd be like, oh, I'll donate for you to build that spaceship. Just don't tell anybody I'm involved.
And that's the thing. He actually has spent millions of his own money into the research. Like, yes, he did get the contract from the US when he bought the ranch. And that was through one of his agencies, and he hired all these scientists. What irks me with that particular investigation is they didn't move into the house on the ranch. They built something separate. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous, because that's not going to explain why were these weirdo locks on the place, and what was with all these different chains and things. But you're living in a separate thing, flying back and forth from Vegas. And there were just things that bugged me. And, it's not that I think they're making it up. The huge dire wolves, maybe it's just me, but if I had something that frickin' big walking towards me, and I only have fur kids, not human kids, but if I was standing there with my kids, there's no way I'd just be calmly standing there until it got a few feet in front of me, or then send my kid to go get the gun from the house and, hey, Junior, run to the house. Who in their right mind runs from a wild animal? Like, so there were just things that I'm like, was it the wording? Am I just being too skeptical?
Or maybe a bit of both.
Or is it jazzed up because it's in a book, and so let's make it exciting? Like, I think there was something there, but there were just loopholes with some of the controls and things that were conducted. And Gorman, and I will give them credit, they used a pseudonym to protect the family who had moved and sold to Bigelow after 2.5 years. But then this guy buys a new ranch, but he's still looking over the ranch for Bigelow. I'm like, I'm no rancher, but is ranching not a full-time job? And you're now 25 minutes away. How are you doing this? And I don't know, maybe I'm too skeptical, but I'm just like, there's something here not jibing.
Yeah, there's certainly holes in the story. And I think with anything with Bigelow, I feel like when his name pops up, I'm already like, all right, what's really going on? Because it's too much of him. Everything is kind of hidden behind layers of people, I think, and layers of these. It's almost like if you're doing some kind of like a financial fraud or something, you'll set up a bunch of like fake accounts and fake
Yeah,
businesses and offshore accounts. I feel like he does that in the UFO world. It's like there's all these kind of government, maybe they're government, maybe they're not. It's just an acronym. That's not the right acronym. This is. And it's just like,
exactly.
and then you just get
Well,
lost in it.
and this is the thing. And speaking of acronyms, now this second book, actually, they've got on the front, it had to be cleared by the Department of Defense, who says, we don't agree with it, but security wise, there's nothing hinky in it. Here's the list of acronyms in this. There we go, like this.
Yeah.
A page and a half.
Mm.
Like, no wonder. I will have to give Sarah a bit of slack. No wonder it's easy to get discombobulated on which alphabet soup was this, because, like you said, there's layers and layers, and you've got the military, and then you've got the intelligence people, and it just goes on and on.
Oh,
Like, they
yeah.
talk about one meeting and there was 3 different levels until they got to who they wanted, who could make a decision. And I'm like, that's just crazy. Like,
Yeah.
no wonder the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And
No, because it's the 20,000 armed monster. And every
yeah,
year, all its arms fall off and it grows new arms with different names. And it's like, that's because it'll be like they were working within this program that was a part of this division of the government that stopped in 1974 and was replaced with this division that had this program that was similar and had all the same people. And, it's you to follow it, you really need to sit down and take notes. Since you're talking about so many books, I want to just
yeah,
run away from my desk for 1 sec. I'm going to
sure.
grab just my bookshelf's just in the next room. I'm going to grab
Okay,
some of
cool.
my favorite UFO books. And since we're on BookTube here, 1
Yeah,
second.
there we go. We'll chat books. Sure, that's great. Okay, and so Canadian folklore, it is very fascinating, and I'm going to come back and catch up a bit. Okay, how am I feeling? Good. Blame you. Oh, then you can't blame BookTube, man. That's not fair. You need some self-control. Oh, yes, and bad Dracula. Awesome book, was my first vampire. Ooh, you're actually getting scared? Oh, some of the other vampire books I have then will blow you away. Yeah, and poor guy feeling sick, but I'm so glad we were able to connect. Oh, day off tomorrow. Nice. No wonder you can stay up and visit with us. Sweet. Dracula's great. You have, Ven, how could you not have read Dracula? Man, you lead a sheltered life. Dracula is like the most awesome. Yes, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it's an amazing story. It's not overly mush. There actually are historical parts, as my family's from Hungary and with Romania, and there are some historical accurate parts to that. We're just still chatting about, as you left, we got back into the vampires and I was catching up, and people are saying, nice to meet you.
Well, nice to
Oh
meet you
my,
all. Is
then
there, is it a lot of like horror book fans?
we read a mix. Bad definitely loves the horror. Ven reads some really creepy chop and slash horror, and I'm
Ooh.
picking on him now because he hasn't read Dracula and he hasn't read Frankenstein.
Okay.
Now, I can't pick on him too much about Frankenstein
It's a
because
tough read.
I just read that a couple years ago. I've seen the movies
Mhm.
for years, but I've never read Mary Shelley's version. I have to say, I loved her version of it.
Mhm.
I'm but Dracula, I read when I was a teenager, and I can see Drax over on my shelf there. It's the same copy I've had since the 1970s, because, yeah, I'm that old. And the funny thing is, and I think I've got it right, I paid something like $1.75. And someone else was laughing because I had just mentioned it in one of my videos recently. I said, I know it's an old book, not because it's $1.75, but there's only one price.
Hmm.
There's no Canada, US price on
Oh,
it. And they're
cool.
like, really? There was, and I'm like, see, this is how the government gets you, and
Hmm.
things suddenly become normal because, the puppies don't know it was ever different.
Yeah.
Hey, Janie, how are you?
I
The
brought a
crafting bookworm.
the crafting bookworm. How
The
do you
cra-
craft and read at the same time? Those seem like two hobbies that wouldn't go well together.
she does them separate, and her channel is amazing. She does what's called junk journals, and that name just bothers me because they are incredible pieces of artwork put together with bookmarks and separate pages and little
Okay.
pockets, and they're just beautiful. I said, and one of my other viewers, Noah, he's not with us tonight, but he and Ven are buddies. We call them the Chaos Gremlins. But poor Noah freaks out about people writing in their books. And
Mm,
I'm brutal for that because I read a lot of nonfiction, and it's the easiest way to keep notes. So,
mhm.
how does it relate to this book? Or I circle dates and I highlight and I go hog wild. So when Ven and Noah were on my live a few weeks ago, Noah called me a book murderer because I have
Oh.
dog-eared pages and this, all in good fun.
Mhm.
And yeah, I said, it's funny because I'll write in my fiction, nonfiction books, but when it comes to books about journaling or discovering yourself and activities and exercises, I won't write in those because I get a separate journal. And Noah's like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense because it's a journal with questions, and I don't want to be swayed 3, 4 months from now when I go back to that question of, oh, what mindset or mood was I in then?
Hmm.
So those books are immaculate.
Hmm. Interesting way to do it. That makes sense.
And,
I pulled off my shelf a collection of some mostly Canadian UFO books. I'll show you. I
oh,
like you. I
okay,
have
those I would need to know.
Yeah, I have a massive collection of UFO books and horror. That's why I asked about horror. But a lot of what I collect for books are I like collecting book adaptions of movies. So like I don't know,
Ah,
like one of my favorites that I have is I'm sure you've heard of the movie Night of the Living Dead. I have like
yes,
an
seen it.
early oh yeah, I've seen it 100. One of my favorites, but I have like an early novelization of that. It's which they're
Ah,
never great, but I don't know why I've been collecting them for years. But UFO books are a thing, and mainly Canadian ones. The first one I'll show you here. This is probably my favorite. See if you can see it good.
and I'm going to start writing down oh, maritime. Okay. Yep.
This is called Maritime UFO Files. This one is long since out of print. It's
Oh
the
no.
author. Yeah, the author's name is Don Ledger, and he's a Nova Scotia-based ufologist. I think he's
Hmm.
retired now. But what this book is it's a collection of documented UFO sightings. Like the headline on the front is personal accounts taken from actual military and RCMP documents. And
Oh,
it's basically just in chronological order, um, copies of documents outlining UFO sightings from across the maritime provinces that
hmm.
either come from military or RCMP documents. So it's like official reports. And it's amazing
Nice.
because you can go through it chronologically, but there's also a glossary where you can look at which province and find the reports. I
Perfect.
find it comes in handy if I'm looking into old UFO cases. There's often some documents in here, or I can at least get a sense of what other sightings occurred around that time. But
Mm-hmm.
it's an amazing book. The first one I found was at a Goodwill shop, and now whenever I'm book hunting on the East Coast. If I ever see these, I buy them. I think I have like
Yeah.
6 of them because I love them. So that's Maritime UFO Files.
Hi,
Now,
Tiki.
to connect to this story is the guy who wrote it. His name was, as I say, is Don Ledger. His kind of claim to fame is he is one of the 2 guys that are seen as the main researchers who discovered and popularized the Shag Harbor UFO sighting. Do you know anything about Shag Harbor?
No.
Okay. So the next 2 books are both on the same topic. So I'll tell you this story briefly. So this was the first one that came out. You may have heard the name Whitley Strieber.
Yes.
He's a famous American UFO writer, but Whitley Strieber had
Yep.
a series of books that he didn't write them. Other people did, but he'd publish them for them because he was a star at the time.
Hmm.
This one is by Don Ledger, who wrote Maritime UFO Files, and Chris Stiles. It's called Dark Object, and on the front it says the world's only government documented UFO crash. The facts confirm the crash happened. Officials deny it. What don't they want us to know? And ultimately, this is the story of the Shag Harbor UFO sighting, which is seen as Canada's most famous UFO sighting. It happened in a small place called Shag Harbor, which is in Nova
Hmm.
Scotia. I'll just read you the back of this.
Sure.
In 1965, a massive wave of UFO sightings occurs worldwide. In 1967, residents of Shag Harbor, Canada, witness a huge UFO crash into the bay. 3 RCMP officers watch it float before it sinks. Navy divers mount an extensive search, and now officials say nothing ever happened. But why? So that's kind of the intro to the story of Shag Harbor. And there's actually, I
Mm-hmm.
have here 2 books about it. This one came out, I think this was early 90s. This one is probably the last 5 or 10 years. It's called Impact to Contact. And what the Shag Harbor UFO sighting was is, again, as you heard, in 1967, the
Mm-hmm.
people in this small town called Shag Harbor, I think it was maybe 30 witnesses, witnessed what they thought was an airplane crashing into the water. It was like 3 lights in the sky that were traveling
Mm.
slowly across the sky until they landed in the water. People reported hearing a splash. So they weren't thinking, oh, it's a UFO. What they thought it
Yeah.
was a commercial airline that crash landed into the water. So they got on
Mm.
the phone, and I don't think it was 911 at the time, but they called like the local police,
Yeah.
which sent RCMP. When the RCMP get on the scene, I think it was 2 separate cruisers showed up, meeting with a bunch of kind of fishermen, local people who were there on the waterfront that reported it. Looking
Right.
out to the water, they could see a light out in the water, which they're thinking this is the plane slowly sinking.
Right.
We got to get out there. So what they
Yeah.
ended up doing is they called the Coast Guard, but it was going to be like, I think 2 hours before the Coast Guard could arrive. So they ended
Yikes.
up going to someone's house who had a fishing boat. They got in the fishing boat to get out to the light, thinking that
Yeah.
they would, be pulling people out of the water and rescuing people.
Yeah.
But by the time they got out there, the light was gone. The only thing on the surface of the water was like a thick sulfuric smelling like foam. And
Ooh.
the mystery starts with that. And to this day, actually, I think in 2 weeks from now is the annual Shag Harbor UFO Festival. And this is a town of maybe, I don't know, 500 people. Every
Right.
year on the anniversary of the sighting, they do a UFO festival where the remaining surviving witnesses of this event, because there's not a
Right.
lot of them now, they go up on stage and they talk about what they experienced back then, and they
Hmm.
sell UFO shaped hamburgers and pancakes. And so,
Like Canadian Roswell.
well, people call it the Canadian Roswell. That's one of the hey, like how people often will. I'm just seeing if it says it on the book. People will often refer to it as Canada's Roswell. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, but if you ever come across any books about Shag Harbor, this one I
Hmm.
see a lot at used bookstores. Dark Object. That's fascinating. Here's another one. I consider this the book about the second most famous Canadian UFO sighting, and this is written by you and my friend. Can you see down there?
Chris Rakowski.
Right. Chris Rutkowski co-wrote this book. It's called When They Appeared, and it's the story of the 1967 Falcon Lake UFO sighting. It
Ah.
happened the same year as Shag Harbor. So the 2 biggest, arguably, most biggest as in most well documented and most often discussed Canadian UFO sightings both happened in 67. Falcon Lake is a whole different story though. Instead of a bunch of people seeing what they believe to be a airplane crash into the water, and I should have said this with Shag Harbor, the Coast Guard did show up the next day. They did search, they sent divers down, they found
Right.
nothing. But
Weird.
Falcon Lake is a whole different story. This is in Manitoba, and this involves a man who goes out into the woods looking for rocks as a hobby. He'll just go on long walks to the woods looking for rocks. And he claimed to have encountered a silver object. He
Yeah.
approached it and got blasted with steam and got injured.
I've either read an article, but as soon as you started saying that, I could see the spots on his chest. That
Yeah.
case I have heard of.
Yeah, I'll see. I'm sure that picture's in this book, but yeah, this is probably the photo you're referring to.
Yeah,
It's you can't really
because he
see it
had
great, but he has
physical burns.
burn marks on his body. Yeah, I'll read you the back of this one as well. So, what happened in the White Shell Forest near Falcon Lake on May 20th of 67? Question mark. For the first time in 50 years, the many facets of this astonishing tale finally come together. Noted UFO researcher Chris Rutkowski opens his vault of documents and images gathered over several decades of inquiry and presents a comprehensive picture of what became the most investigated UFO case in Canadian history. Stan Michalak, son of the man at the center of this story, offers an inside perspective of what was happening in the Michalak home immediately following his father's extraordinary encounter. Join him as he eavesdrops on the daily struggles of his family while they deal with his father's injuries in the endless streams of investigators and media. So that's that. This would still be in print. I think this just came out maybe 3 or 4 years ago, if my memory serves me correctly. Although my concept of time sucks. 2017.
Mine goes all over the place. I can still hear my teachers always freaking out about my tenses because I would write something and there would be past, present, and future. And they're like, how can you not get this straight? And I'm thinking, how is this an issue?
Yeah, I'm too busy for this.
That's just the way things flow. Like,
Yeah.
go with it.
I got two more.
Sure.
So I'm on the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia. I'm sure you've heard of Oak Island, right?
Yes, I was actually going to ask you when you were saying about mysteries. I'm like, I need to ask him if he's ever looked into Oak Island.
Oh yeah, big time. I've been there a lot of times. I've done tours of the island, and what's really funny, see this weird hat on this guy behind me. That was my grandfather's hat. My granddad passed away maybe 7 or 8 years ago. This was his hat, and my granddad and I were really close. And I think I get a lot of my interest in this stuff from him because he would talk all day to me about UFOs, Oak Island, ghosts, whatever I wanted or whatever I was willing to sit and listen to. But the interesting thing was when my granddad was a kid, one of his childhood best friends, their father was the one who had the license to actually search for treasure on Oak Island. So my granddad this would have been like the 40s. He spent like 2 summers on Oak Island assisting with the search. And like the people my granddad was associated with on the new TV show, The Curse of Oak Island, they reference them all the time and show pictures of them and stuff. But my granddad used to always tell me about that. He was right into Oak Island long before that TV show and stuff. And as I had been, but that brings me to this book. This one, I don't even know if this was ever in print because it looks like something you would buy at, I don't know, self-published at a flea market or something. But it's called The Oak Island Quest by William Croker. And it poses the question, what is the real truth behind the Oak Island mystery? Were pirates ever involved? An engineer surveyor investigates Oak Island and speculative theories link the mystery with an ancient civilization and the UFO phenomenon. So this book ultimately presents a theory that the mystery of Oak Island is actually related to UFOs. And I read it and they don't make a very convincing case. But it's as someone who's into Oak Island and UFOs, it's really cool that at least for a moment those two topics came together in a
Yeah.
pretty amateurish publication.
And Diane saying it's sweet about your granddad, probably a master storyteller. And yeah, how awesome that you both shared a love of that.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was awesome. And it's I host a podcast Nighttime, and my first ever episode is my guest was my granddad who shared his UFO sighting. That was really what started my podcast. Is my granddad in the 80s claimed to have seen a UFO, and later
Mm.
on in life, the way it actually happened, I was showing him my like he was amazed by technology because back in the day he was into radios like CB radio in his truck and all this stuff and shortwave radio, hearing radio stations from other parts of the world. So that was like his version of like cutting edge technology. But I was at
Yeah,
his house and I was showing him the stuff my iPhone could do. Googling things. There's the calculator. You can look at Google Maps, and he
yeah.
was just so amazed by it. But what he wanted me to do is he's like, why don't you record me? Because I was showing him how the video camera and stuff works on it. He's like, why don't
Mm-hmm.
you record me and I'll tell you the story of the UFO I saw, and then you can see if you can figure out what it was, and use your phone to try to solve what I had seen.
Oh,
And
cool.
in that recording of him telling the story, in my investigation into his UFO sighting, is actually the first ever episode of my podcast. So it's yeah,
Awesome.
he's been associated with it since the beginning. That's why I keep his hat right there.
Oh, what a beautiful and what a beautiful way to remember him. That's
Oh yeah.
awesome.
Well, it was and then later in his life, like his last 5 or 10 years, his health wasn't great. His health was horrible, and he was in a
Mm.
nursing home. But the one thing that got him excited and got him talking is if anyone mentioned UFOs, he was like, "I saw one." And when I released my episode of my podcast about it with him, the local newspaper did a story on it. So he had
Oh,
copies, and
cool.
like a nurse came down the hall. He was basically like throwing it at her, like, "Read this to me."
Aw.
Yeah, he's
It's Diane saying it's loving that. And it is. What a beautiful
yeah.
story. I mean, that's
I'm glad I have it recorded.
lovely.
Yeah, I'm glad I have it recorded. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Last one. Have you ever seen this? I don't know if you're a Nancy Drew
Nancy
reader.
Drew. Mine used to be in yellow covers.
Yeah, this is an. I think. Let me see what year this is. The 1980, but this was the
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Drew book where she explored the flying saucer mystery.
Hmm.
I bought I read it when I was a kid. I wasn't into Nancy Drew, but my sister was. I was into UFOs though, and I remember
Right.
seeing this on the. I'm like, what? Yeah, I got to read that. And it's actually quite good. I bought this copy not too long ago, hoping one of my kids would be interested in reading it with me.
Mm.
They weren't.
No.
They weren't. And then I really didn't have my ego was too big for me to sit downstairs alone reading Nancy Drew. So it will remain on my shelf.
Oh, there you go. Now, one Canadian author I know, and now I'm so sad I unhauled the book, but it was years ago, and that was John Robert Colombo,
Oh,
because he had put together stories. Yes, that's the one I unhauled. And like his ghost stories, he had collected the different stories. And yeah, I unfortunately gave that away because who knew a few years down the road. Well, first of all, I never thought I'd be on YouTube because I'm not an in front of the camera person, but I needed to do something in life. I had a computer at home, I'm at home, but I didn't have the editing skills to pull it off without being in front of the camera. So
mm,
here I am, two
there
and a
you are.
half years later.
Well, that's a great thing to do. Sitting like if you're really into books, that can be like an isolated kind of hobby, unless you have your close friends near you. But if you can mix a love of books with like social media and find other people, it's a good way
Yep.
to connect with like-minded people. I have a feeling you would have a hard time drumming up interest in UFO books locally.
Well, I have a few people, but see, I'm at home now. They're still working.
Mm,
And so, yeah, that's been the nice thing about YouTube because, well, during that nightmare of COVID, because I actually did reflexology and Reiki, but Doogie here decided that was personal care. But the actors in Toronto could still bump uglies and swap spit, but that was fine. But I had to stay closed, even though I, work at people's feet and nowhere near their face. And it wasn't the time to start the business. And I believe the universe does things for a reason. So
mm,
it wasn't meant to be. But then I had to do something with my day. I mean, I can read books, but I like chatting with people and that as well. And the awesome thing about, like I say, stumbling into BookTube is having met a bunch of people. We read different genres. It's great because you get to learn about different genres, learn different things, connect with different people. We're all in different time zones, so it's kind of like
yeah, that's
time
always fun.
traveling.
Yeah.
It's like, what day is it where you are? Well, I'm going for breakfast. Well, I'm going to bed. And
Mhm.
it's just kind of it's neat because there's so many different things to connect about and people interested in a variety of things. And I've checked out some of the paranormal channels, and some are good, and the debunkers. But again, they're all American or British, which is fine. But again, it's not like you're ever going to be able to sit and connect for coffee over
Mhm.
that, right?
Mhm.
So it's even trying to track that down. But it's been lovely because getting to meet other people or, doing something like this, it's like I don't have to run around and make sure everything's dusted in the right spot or worry that, the kids are going to behave properly when the company comes. It's just turn the computer one way and boom, away we go.
Yep. I get it. I feel you 100%. Yeah. No, I
And
think it's
just,
a great thing that you're doing. I like this.
oh, thanks. And with Janie, I hate that feeling of realizing you may have unhauled the wrong books. I still
Mhm.
have a video I need to do, but I need to collect the books first because the thrift store has been amazing this past year. And I've found a ton of books for awesome prices here at Goodwill. And when you hit the 50% off day, it's like, woohoo,
Look
big
out. Look
bag of
out.
books coming home.
Yeah.
But there's at least 10 books I've repurchased because I unhauled them years ago, thinking, and because I never read fiction more than once. So Dracula's pretty much my only stayed with me for decades. I just repurchased Salem's Lot a few years ago, a few of the Anne Rice books. So now what I need to do is make a video, and I don't unhaul books anymore because I've been into the banned book project and Freedom to Read Week, which here in Canada is February, but coming up September 22nd to 28th in the US. It is crazy the number of books that people complain about. And so it's really challenged books more than banned books. But the number of books going off shelves, not just here in Canada, in the States, it's wild.
I bet.
And I just did a video about Florida because I don't watch the news because there's just not a lot of positive stuff in there. And I don't
Is there
care how
any?
many I don't care how many courts Trump goes to. It's like there's other stuff happening in the world, people.
Mhm.
Him sitting in one courtroom is no different than 3 weeks later in another courtroom. But anyway, I must have been looking something up and came across this thing in Newsweek. And in Florida, and it had to do with Stephen King as well, because it's his books in particular that they've had this massive ban about. And DeSantis passed legislation that they could ban these books, take them off the shelves. Well, one county alone in Florida removed 72 titles. I didn't even know he wrote that many books, and there's books of his they haven't banned. But 72 of his books have all been removed from their public school
Oh wow.
shelves.
Oh, wow.
And there were 3 or 4 other counties, and again, massive, like 16 different books. I think the other one had 25. So now
Of just Stephen King that's happened. Like,
that's just the Stephen King ones. That isn't all the other books they've been removing
yeah, of
over the
course.
last
Yeah.
couple years.
That you would never notice. That you notice him because he's such a star.
Exactly. And now the publishing houses have stepped up because, money talks, and they can't sell those books to the school boards. And when you're getting rid of 72 titles, that's a big chunk of change.
Heck yeah. Like it can make or break an author's career to have one of their books bought by a school board. You know, that's I get that. I'm a big Stephen King fan as well. I have one of his books that's kind of famous for being a banned book. I have a copy of. It's called Rage. Do you know the story of the book Rage?
I don't know it, but I do remember seeing it on the list.
Okay, yeah, he wrote that under the pseudonym under the name Richard Bachman.
One of the Bachman books. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the story of like somebody who a student who goes postal and brings a gun to school and does something horrible, but it's told from the point of view of that student, and it's a very graphic account of like what has become a major problem. Back when he wrote it, it wasn't on the news every 5 minutes that this was happening in the States, and that was before the cheap semi-automatics and all this stuff. But anyway, the book, I read it. It's a good book. It's not one of his best or anything. It's good. I have a copy of it that I had for years, a hardcover copy, and it's worth a lot of money just because I think even Stephen King wanted it removed after the Columbine shootings.
Yep. That's what Janie's saying, requested it.
Yeah.
So if it was before Columbine, that's an old book.
Yeah. Oh, he wrote, I don't know off the top of my head when, but I think he wrote it either in like, maybe it was the early 80s is I'm guessing, but I think it was around Columbine that he had it pulled. And it by far wasn't one of his, or by any stretch of the imagination, wasn't one of his better or more popular books. It's just the fact that it's removed now. Like collectors of his stuff, some of them look for it. People have offered to buy it from me, but I'm just, I don't know. It seems weird, but books, banned, but to profit off banned books.
Yeah. Well, now there's 6 publishing houses who have gotten together with Stephen King, who are now suing the state of Florida.
Oh, good luck.
So I'll have to keep an eye and see kids who have went into schools blaming it on the book. And this is what gets me is, when did taking self-responsibility stop being a thing? There's a couple of other books I've read. Is it? Oh, here it is. A former top New Age leader takes you on a dramatic journey inside the New Age nightmare. Yeah, talk about someone who doesn't own up to his own issues. It's like, buddy, grow up.
Well, I'm just thinking.
Yep.
With what the Crafting Bookworm says is kids read that book and get inspired to do this horrible thing. I don't know if they met a lot of kids nowadays, but I don't think any kids are going to take inspiration from a book.
And I mean, there's the other is some of them don't read, but again, well, look at year even before that, right? Oh, it's the music I listen to. Oh, it's the video games I play. No, it isn't, because look at all the people who play video games, and they don't all go bat poo cuckoo.
Yeah.
So you can't blame it on that.
Answer. Yeah, people want the easy answer. But
right? It's like, ooh, it's somebody else's fault, or ooh, my parents didn't buy me the dress or the car or whatever I wanted, and so I just had to, go all wild. But I want to show you something, and there isn't information on it, and we're going back to the UFO thing. Okay. So
yeah, we sure got sidetracked there.
Yeah, welcome to my live streams.
Yeah.
And any of my booktubers will laugh. I have a set of 10 questions, which I originally planned to ask them, So far, I'm batting 100. I've never gotten to the questions with any of them, and we run for 2 hours, and we still don't get to the questions. So, by the way, if you need to book it, let me know.
Yeah, I got just a few more minutes and then I'm going to get my kids to sleep, but we're not going to
Okay.
get through I could stay for 4 hours. We won't get through those questions. So I don't feel bad.
So, I'll definitely show you this. Now, not years ago, last August the 4th, I saw this through my kitchen window and I couldn't figure out what it was. Now, lucky for me, I knew someone. His name's Enzo Cyril, and he's from the US, and he's big into UFOs as well. And I had someone else who could get him information because he doesn't have email to get in touch with. So I sent him this photo, and I'll just show you a little bit of this clip and let me know what you think. Now, this also came in with the meteor showers. So I was thinking meteor, and I ran to the back of my house. So this is what I caught on my phone because that's all I had. And see, it's moving really slow. Yeah, I had the dramatic music when I uploaded the video.
It's not striking me as a meteor or comet or anything because it's so slow. It's just hanging there.
So what would be, and I'll go back to there we go. What would be your guess on that, Jordan? I know what it is, and I'll tell you. And this is what makes me wonder when people see UFOs, because if I hadn't caught this, I think of how I describe it and what could people make of that.
Okay, I have a theory, and I don't know if I'm right, but there was one of the other photos you saw where you had up where you could see like the roof of a house and stuff. Are you able to flip to
my
that
garage?
One? Okay. Is there a way that you can put that on the screen so I could see that again?
Yeah.
It's okay if not.
Just tell me
maybe
when
to next one.
A little farther.
Yeah. Okay, right there.
Okay.
So looking at the sky, the time of day seems to be just around dusk. So this is probably
it's 8:44 p.m.
Yeah. So the sun is very low. So if you were outside, everything would be casting a very long shadow. If something is in the sky high enough, it's going to be, the sun will be hitting it at a different angle. So it'll be very bright compared to what you're experiencing in the trees and whatnot because of how low the sun is. A part of me is thinking this could be a jet, and the contrail coming from the jet is being illuminated by the setting sun, hitting it from a different angle than you are looking that you're filming from. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think whatever it is, it's that bright because it's getting direct sunlight where you're standing is shadowed.
You're 100% correct.
Oh, look at that.
You're 100% correct. And see what really, you probably can't. Can you see my mouse?
No,
probably not. Okay.
But the photo you have up there really tells the story because you can see that the bright object is coming from one point, and the bright object, it doesn't look like something that has a light bulb in it. It looks like it's being lit by something else. So it's
and it was the divisions, and so with that, because I sent that in the video to Enzo, and Enzo used to be in the military.
Okay.
And a lot of, aerial stuff. So when he's looking at the sky, he recognized it. Now, he also used something called Flight Radar. I think it's 21. It's a free program. Mm-hmm. Now, in a way, it's cool because you can see where every plane is in North America, exactly what time, where they're traveling. And I think it shows the whole world. On one hand, that's cool. On one hand, that's creepy because let's face it, not everyone has wonderful motives. Why would you want them to give them free access?
Yep.
But Enzo was able to tell me the exact jet that was because I
Cool.
gave him the time, the direction, and the date. So he could actually show me which plane it was going through that.
I'm going to try to recreate it. So imagine this light here
Yeah,
is the sun. Here's my fist is the earth.
yep,
You'll see here is shadowed because you would have been right around here, but the object above you, let's just say my finger,
yep,
was just above the ground, but enough that it was lit up by the sun because the sun was hitting it, but not hitting you. It's kind of hard to imitate
yep.
there, but that's a common kind of explanation for a sighting, or a common thing people will see that'll trick them. And it's not
Yep.
always planes, although it is common with planes. It also satellites too, like a low satellite that's passing through our atmosphere can
Yep.
can be hit by the sunlight at dusk and appear as a bright light in the sky. It can also appear like it's blinking just because
Mm-hmm.
of the cloud coverage and the moisture and stuff in the air can cause weird little tricks. It can look like it's different colors or changing colors again because of the
The
moisture and
lighting.
stuff in the sky.
Yep.
But yeah, it's cool though. It's cool that you captured it. It gets
It
people
was
talking.
amazing because I've been into astronomy since I was knee high to a grasshopper. I still have the basic little telescope my dad got me when I was 10. And I mean, he was funny because he knew I was into, if it was out of the box, I wanted to read about it, know about it, try and figure it out. And so the first time I looked through it and it was on a full moon, I lived out in the country. So, of course, beautiful, clear sky. And he's like, honey, do you see anyone waving? I'm like, Dad, seriously, like, I don't think so. But so I mean, I've been looking at the sky for decades and decades. Never had I ever seen anything like that. And it was a total fluke that I even caught that because I just happened to be walking into my kitchen, looked out the window, and went, I've never seen that. But what is that? And then I quick grabbed my cell phone and then ran to the back of the house and caught the video. So thank goodness for cell phones because I couldn't have done that years ago. But that's really changed my perspective a bit with UFOs because
Mhm.
I'm thinking, okay, go back to Roswell and all these old sightings. And okay, granted, there weren't planes and all that at the time, but even when I hear about people saying, oh, it was this close and that big, and I mean, to me, when I looked at it, it looked freaking close. Like I thought
Mhm.
it was going to, city or two over. It was hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And it was like the curve of the earth and everything. And so I'm thinking, how do Jack and Jill average like me who don't know how to, measure, gauge things in the sky? Because it's way different than trying to gauge something on the ground,
Heck
right?
yeah. And when you're looking at photos as well, like if you're doing it that way, a lot of people, like what was good about your photos is you still have some objects on the ground, like the tree or the
Yep,
house, so you can at least get some perspective. But a lot of UFO photos are like a sky with a dot, and it's impossible
yep.
to get any perspective from that. But
And that's it. And I mean, like Enzo said, he could tell me what it was because I included the date, the time,
the
the
little
direction. And
direction,
so,
yeah.
and those are a lot of things that people don't get. And, like with the Roswell incident, it was really 30 years later that they started really delving into, oh, what is this? How many people can remember what they were doing 3 weeks ago?
Mhm.
I mean, I get it. It was a huge event, would stick in your mind, but there's still things that you'd misremember unless you journaled or something like that. It would, but yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I
It
mean,
is. It is. And it's not just for weirdos who believe in aliens. You'll learn a lot
no.
about a whole bunch of different stuff. And you'll hear a bunch of great stories too.
And that's why I like that Chris said he's sticking with the UFO term here in Canada. I know it's changed to UAP in, I know for sure the United States. I'm not sure if Britain. And part of that's because of the negativity, because as soon as people hear UFO, some jump to ETs.
Yeah.
And that isn't what it's just literally unidentified.
Yeah. That's
But
true. It's the whole UFO versus UAP, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon.
yeah,
It's almost like for a period of time, you'd have a sunroof in your car, uh, and people would be like, "Sunroofs leak. They're tacky. You don't need a sunroof." So then car companies are like, "We have these new moon roofs." It's the same thing. It's just a fancy like marketing.
exactly.
UAP is just like, no, it's not a UFO. Like, that's crazy. This is a whole different thing. This is like science. The military's involved. And you're like, oh, like the UFO stuff, like all the same people. Well, yeah, but it's different.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And so then was, controlled satellite. And that comes up a lot, especially with all the satellites now, because what goes
Oh,
up comes down.
there's a ton of them.
Like Diane said, great guess. Then you get the sun in Manchester. Seriously. There's sky there sometimes. It can't be rain all the time. But that's the other, even with the satellite station and different things, it's all about how the sun hits it. It'll get bright and then fade. And it was just a satellite going by. Like when I tried to look into what did I see last August, and I knew the Perseid meteor shower was coming. That's why I just figured from the size, maybe it's a big flippin' meteor. Then tell the sky that. But the year before, there actually had been an issue because it was Musk. I can't remember what they're called, but his whole string of
The
satellites.
Starlink satellites. Yeah, I
And
get
someone,
emails all the time with I saw this, and it's clearly Starlink. But yeah, sorry.
and that's what happened around here in 2023. Now that I didn't see, but a number of people did, and were calling into, different places. What is this? And sure enough, it was the row of satellites. So to me, it's just going to get more confusing to try and figure this out, because between light pollution and other issues, there are basic things people don't recognize in the sky, like things like Venus and Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea what those big bright things are, but they're planets.
Mm-hmm.
Or there, and I have to reread it. I have to finish reading it. Seeing in the Dark by Timothy Ferris. And in that book, he talks about when we had that power outage years ago and it all shut down in LA, and people were losing their minds because they didn't know what all those lights were in the sky. They've never seen them, right? Like they're in the city, they had no clue. It's wild. Hey, it's nice. I see you have a few new subs tonight, Jordan.
Yes, I'm trying to sign in so I can get in the chat, but I want to thank them. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, so now can you not get into...
I'm in.
All right, awesome. So yeah, yay, now I'm happy because, I felt kind of bad that...
Yeah, I've never used
yay.
You use StreamYard. I've never used that before.
Do you not?
I've always just used, I use Zoom for my video chats, and then I use a program called OBS that like streams for me and stuff. So, but it's a bit more complicated. This is just like smooth and easy.
Yeah, this is like the freebie I'm just learning to do.
No, it does
now, here's one question before you have to scoot. Mm-hmm. What, by the way, is the difference between a podcast and a YouTube video?
The difference is the video. So here's how I think of it. Here's the best way to think about it is, so I have a YouTube channel where I live stream my recordings. So on YouTube, you'll see, just like we are now, you'll see my face, your face, we're talking, there's a video of it. But what a podcast is I will take the audio from our discussion and I'll edit it and add things and make it perfect.
Yeah.
And then I upload it to my website, and somebody who subscribes to my podcast, rather than like like on YouTube, if you subscribe to a show, you'll get like a notification, like, Jordan has
Right.
a new video. The way a podcast will work is my audio, when I upload it, it will automatically download to your phone. And when you're walking to work or getting groceries, you pop in your headphones and you can listen. So a podcast, you don't
Okay.
listen to it live, you listen to it after the fact, and it's just audio.
Huh.
But what I do is, since I'm sitting down on on Zoom or whatever, talking to somebody recording, I just live stream my recording sessions. So what you probably saw on my YouTube channel was me recording a podcast.
Okay.
And just
So,
like what you're doing here, if you took just the audio of this, just the
yeah.
sound, that's your podcast.
And see, it's interesting because I've noticed YouTube now lets you do podcasts.
I think what they're doing is they're making it so that you can somehow, I don't know a lot about it, but you can link up your channel or playlists of your channel as a podcast, and it will automatically like take the audio from your videos and feed them to the places that people get podcasts. The big ones are
Hmm.
like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon
Yep.
Music. So it's the YouTube is involved in that in some way, but I don't do it through them. I just have my own thing.
Yeah, and I haven't ventured. I mean, the video making has been a whole adventure as well. And then I keep hearing all these people saying about podcasts, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be a whole other learning curve. Live streams, and yeah, I did forget. Don't say the S word, because actually the last live stream we just learned that for someone, when that came up during live streams, they were actually losing people.
Weird.
And I have no idea how YouTube would even know,
Oh,
but
they know everything. Like
yeah, it's
whatever you're talking about, I can really see it with my channel. My YouTube channel's monetized, so you
oh,
can, like, it has
nice.
ads, and they can, like, depending on what you say, what words you use, how often you use those words, will determine whether or not they'll put ads on your videos and stuff. So it's like it's
Wow.
almost in real time. Like, if like just this our talk tonight, my brain working the way it works. When we had that little talk about firearms in the book Rage,
Oh, yeah,
that would have
yeah.
been enough. Like if I was live streaming, I'd be like, "Ugh, no."
Done.
Yeah. But oh yeah, that's the algorithms are crazy. But anyway, I'm gonna take off. But this has been a delight. I love what you're doing here. Your audience is great.
Thank
Everybody's
you.
right in the conversation. It's so awesome. This is the best part of YouTube. This sort of thing. What you're doing here
Yes.
is like what it's meant for. The rest of YouTube is arguing about the presidential debate and threatening to do horrible things to their opposition. Here, you're all just happily talking about books, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and I so appreciate your time and glad that we could do this. It's been a wonderful chat. And
Yeah,
at some point in the future, if you would like to join again, I'd be more than
absolutely.
happy to have you. And
Absolutely. You should reach out to Chris Rutkowski as well. I'm sure he'd make the time to come on, even for
oh,
a short spot. He's fascinating to talk to. He's a university professor. Well, he's
yeah,
retired university professor who has spent the last, I don't know, 40 years researching UFOs. Doesn't get cooler than that.
yeah. And I hope you can see the comments
I
below.
can, yes.
Everyone's thanking you.
Great
And
to meet you, Ben. Great to meet you, Crafting Bookworm. I was thinking, if they're into crafting and books, imagine if they figured out audiobooks. Then they could craft while listening to audiobooks. It would change your life. Uh,
there you go, Janie.
imagine the things you
and,
could get done. And Diane,
and
great to meet you as well.
yeah, this has been lovely. And I don't know if Chris has an email on his YouTube channel, but I will definitely
He
check
probably, if he
that
does,
out.
he probably doesn't use it. I'll email you his email address.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. And
awesome.
yeah, thank you. This is a great connection.
Yeah.
My TBR is now even longer with new books. Then do not go shopping after this live stream. He's always teasing me because I have some of my book hauls up at the thrift store, and it can be
Oh,
anywhere from 10 to 20 books.
okay.
And he's like, I thought you were poor. How do you get all these books? I'm like, one, I put money aside and budget. I shop at the thrift store. And he's just like crazy. I'm going to have to fly to Manchester and take his bank card because he like 20 books already in September. We're only on the 12th.
Oh my gosh. Slow down. All right. Well, we'll talk again. Great connecting with you. This has been a blast. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much, Jordan. I
Awesome.
appreciate it. Hope your
Awesome.
kiddos feel better soon.
Oh, they're tough. We got good genes over here.
That's good.
Awesome. Have a
Janie's
great
letting
night,
you know
everybody.
her mind
Oh,
wanders.
all right. See y'all later, and bye-bye.
Take care, Jordan. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, that was a blast. And thank you so much, everybody. I'm sorry I didn't keep up very well with the comments. I kind of tried to look off on the side. That's right. You can't say anything. Admitting it's the first step. Take care. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Diane, Ven, Janie. I think we lost Pad. Diane, please let me know about that Ancient Egypt YouTube channel. I misplaced the paper. I'm so sad. And also, let me know if you would like to come on as a guest. I have some openings, need to book some people. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. This has really been a blast. Take care, Janie. I'm going to do the big weird waves, so you guys are used to this. Thanks so much. It's been a hoot, everybody. Really enjoyed. Appreciate the support and all the wonderful comments.